Detroit, Michigan. This is Conversations with Lavish. It's time for us all to come together. Young, old, and everyone in between. Lavish talks about business, news, politics, networking, and anything else that's going on in the world. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lavish Towing, and on YouTube at Lavish T. Williams. This is Lavish T. Williams.
Hey, what's going on, boys and girls? Today, I got one of my good friends, one of my buddies on the show today. You might have heard last week, a big announcement was made 1 week ago from today about Chief James Craig and his retirement. Okay, well, it's true. And we got him on the show today. And he's going to talk a little bit about it. Everybody give a warm round of applause for Chief James Craig.
How you doing, Lavish?
Hey, what's going on, Chief, man? I'm glad you took some time out today to join me, to be on the podcast, to talk about you, talk about the Detroit Police Department, the beginning to the end. There's always an ending to every beginning. You came to Detroit 13?
2013. In fact, it would have been 8 years on July 1st.
8 years you've been working for Detroit. How was it when you came to Detroit? When you came to Detroit to take the position of chief?
You know, I got to tell you, Lavish, let me digress for a moment and just say, appreciate you allowing me to come on your podcast. But as you know, some of your viewers may know, I actually started my policing career 44 years ago, right here in the city of Detroit. Joined at 19 years old, left after 2.5 years. 1,500 police officers were laid off. You know, it's a lot of conversation about defunding. I know firsthand what defunding looks like. And so then left and went to Los Angeles, where I spent the lion's share of my policing career, 28 years, 28 wonderful years. And then from there, entering into the Portland, Maine Police Department as a chief of police. From there, Cincinnati, Ohio, and then full circle back here to the great city of Detroit. And so I know one of your questions was, how was Detroit when you got back here? Well, we talked about defunding the police when I left here because of the layoffs. When I arrived back almost 8 years ago, the city was in a bad state. As you know, we were facing bankruptcy. Did go through bankruptcy. An emergency manager had been appointed to take over the day-to-day running of the city. I was appointed under the emergency manager, and I only reported to him, as you know. The mayor then was being city council and police commission had no authority. But I'll tell you, it was a great time. It was a very challenging time. One of the big issues, we talk about defunding, many of the Detroit police officers felt demoralized. The morale was at the bottom. And oh, by the way, 10% of their pay had been taken just months prior to my appointment. But in addition to that, the community's morale was at the bottom. So you had a recipe for disaster. Officers didn't really feel supported. They were forced into 12-hour shifts. Crime was running rampant. It was a bad situation, Lavis. And then certainly the community didn't have a lot of confidence in this police department at that time. 1 hour response times to calls for service. A very ridiculously low clearance rate to homicides. One of the lowest in the country. I think it was something like 11%. So everything was wrong.
Okay.
But I've always been an individual who loves challenge. And so coming back home, not only was it a challenge, but certainly an opportunity. And I look back, and I've said it, during my retirement announcement, the last 8 years has been the best time of my 44-year policing career. I have not one regret. I certainly love the people of Detroit, people who work, who are entertained here, and who live here, and Metro Detroit. So again, glad to be on your show, and I'm sure you're gonna do big things down the road. I got to tell you, and this is for your viewing audience. We met some years ago, and you were always someone that wanted to make a difference in our community. You were never afraid, but as a local activist, you bonded with this police department, and we worked on some great stuff together. Most notable, we both have a genuine love for cars. We did some car shows together, and really, when you think about what defines community policing, it's about relationships, and that's what we did. We built relationships, and you were an instrumental part. And I know that you're running for office, police commission.
Correct.
And I'll just say this: I think you'll be a phenomenal police commissioner, because I know your commitment to this city. I know your commitment to the men and women who serve, and for that, many blessings to you going forward.
Thank you. And I want to state that part of me running for a police commissioner actually comes from you and your leadership. You don't tolerate too much stuff. And part of being on the board of police commissioners is to oversight, community citizen oversight of the police department. And you as a chief, you do not have a problem disciplining nor terminating any officer that doesn't see fit to be in that position as a police officer, which in a lot of cases, you see other departments across the country that pacify, baby, and cover up for their officers. You're straight up front. You're verbal. You're vocal about it. You're in the media. You're terminating. You don't believe in playing favoritism. Although you're the police chief and this is your department, you don't have a problem terminating individuals. And I think that kind of separates you from other chiefs. And that was a part of me participating and wanting to be a police commissioner, just so that I can give the citizens the best that they can get, being a leader and a voice for them. When officers are not doing their job, everybody doesn't have a voice. So I want to use my voice to be heard for the citizens of Detroit. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, I commend you for taking the leap. Many times people complain about what needs to be changed, but they don't get involved. They sit in their basement, they get on social media, put all kind of madness out in some cases. But you want to be about change. And this is a very critical time in our profession. I've never seen a time like this in my 44 years. Our profession is in a crisis, and it takes the goodwill of folks like yourself who want to be part of change, but certainly want to support the good men and women who do it right. You've probably heard me say, I've had the opportunity to say this on a national stage as well as local, but the vast majority of our men and women do it right. They just do. The number of contacts we have with our community are in the hundreds. And most times they're uneventful. There are instances when an officer is faced with an imminent threat to their life or a threat to another, that they have to make that critical decision whether or not to use deadly force. And so I look at these young officers who go out here and serve with distinction each and every day. They say to me, as officers in other cities across this country, we appreciate you, Chief Craig, because you're not afraid to stand up and support us. And sadly, Lavish, what's missing today is the absence of support by those who sit in seats of influence. And you notice I said seats of influence. I'm not talking about seats of leadership. Everybody who sits in a seat of influence is not necessarily a leader. It's not popular today for some elected officials to stand up and denounce violence against police officers. And I just want to share this one point with you,
All right,
Lavish, because I know that I held a news conference, might be almost a month and a half ago, because there was a rash of attacks on our police officers. Officers were shot at. In one instance, an officer was approached by a person with a rifle, and clearly, clearly an imminent threat to their life. So I held a news conference to denounce the violence. We reached out to a very notable leader in our community and asked if that person would stand and support denouncing violence against police officers. And the response was, I will not. I will not. And so when you think about that, Lavish, you know, why? I mean, police officers are out there to protect and serve. And as you pointed out so aptly, you know, if an officer crosses the line, I'm going to publicly hold them accountable because the community has come to expect it. They believe in the transparency. Some places talk about transparency. We do transparency because this is how you continue to build those trust-based relationships.
Right. I mean, you show it every day. And I want to talk about how transparent you are. When you came to this department, police officers, they couldn't wear stud earrings. They couldn't wear a beard.
That's right.
It was a big issue for police officers to wear baseball hats before you came. And you changed that to let police officers be a little bit more free with themselves within the department.
Absolutely.
How is that a level of professionalism, or is that a police, a city rule preference? How does that come about?
It's really cultural. I mean,
Okay.
Certainly the LAPD still won't allow officers in uniform to wear beards. You know, I'm adverse to it. However, here's what I know. You have to evolve with the times. And if we really talk about being a part of the community and reflect the community, we have to be the community. And sometimes being the community, we have to look like the community. And so these young men and women who serve, and one could say, well, it's a small thing, but it really was a big thing. It didn't change the professionalism. In fact, I can say, compared to when I got here and to present day, this is a more professional organization. I see it. And so allowing officers to wear, you know, beards, the male officers, and female officers to don studs, they're part of the community. And one thing that I did coming in the door, Lavish, I wanted to hear from the men and women who serve. I've made it a practice that I would conduct monthly meetings with a cross section of this department. I do it with the police officers. I do it with the supervisors because I want to know what's going on. Because when you sit at the top of an organization, many times information is filtered. It doesn't ever reach you. And if you really want to know what's going on, talk to the people who do the work. And I've learned so much about this organization, about their needs and wants. And I think that served me well in my tenure. And I know some of my budding managers, executives, command officers have embraced the same approach. This is what leadership's all about.
Correct. You came to the city and we had no NPOs, neighborhood police officers. Did they implement that in other cities? Did you implement that? How did that come about?
You know, when I saw that the relationship between the department and community was marginal, one thing I kept hearing upon my appointment as I got out in the community is that residents, some of them said, I don't trust the police. Not in the context of that, you know, if the police stop me, I'm going to be beaten. Not that kind of distrust. It was a matter of not trusting because they didn't have any confidence that this department was going to keep them safe. I mean, think about it. You dial 911, it takes an hour for you to get there. People begin to lose confidence. Another common thing I heard early on was when community members wanted to point out, let's say, for example, a drug house in a neighborhood. Officers come to the house, and as they're talking to the community member about this drug house, officers would look in the direction of the drug house. In some instances, would even point. Are you talking about that house over there? So what have they just done? They put that community member who wants to work with the police on front. And so that was a big deal. I heard it more than once. So I knew we had a trust issue coming in. But when you talk about the MPOs, it was an opportunity to give officers a piece of real estate. And their sole purpose is to connect with people who live in that footprint, whether it's a business, whether it's a resident, a church, connect with the community and address those issues in a large part with quality of life. And so I was a senior lead officer in Los Angeles. Senior lead officers operate very similarly to what our neighborhood police officers or our MPOs. So I had firsthand experience with understanding how to work in a designated area of my station and connect with the community. So I thought I would replicate it here in Detroit. And I got to tell you, it's worked so well that, we think about Green Light Detroit and how the community embraced that and the positive outcomes we've seen from using that technology. So I'm just ecstatic over our successes. But again, I'm only as good as the folks I work with. They felt supported. My leadership team felt supported. And when it was time to execute on the vision, very little hesitation. And I always operated from a place that, people, if they felt a need to push back and come up with a counter suggestion, they knew I would listen to them and I wouldn't shut the door. And candidly, unfortunately, in our profession, historically, we've been a top-down organization. Top down, very hierarchical. Do as I say, don't ask any questions. That was the way of policing. They call it a quasi-military. They don't even run the military like that any longer.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's great to have these neighborhood police officers. It kind of shifts the patrol officers in a different direction so they can cater to other serious cause while the neighborhood police officers talk to the citizens about blight and various other different issues that's going on in the neighborhood. And then it develops a relationship when they know, hey, this police officer that's in the neighborhood, you can actually talk to them about what's going on. You can express your concerns. It's great for the neighborhood block clubs and different organizations in the neighborhood. They know pretty much what's going on and not have to feel so uptight when they see the police, come up, because sometimes the police, they can be very intimidating to a lot of different people, especially seeing so much of the negativity that's going on in the media with the police departments.
And that's what, Lavish, that's what we're fighting. If it happens in California, it touches us. If it happens in Chicago, it touches us. And so I only ask, that let's not paint our profession with a broad brush. This community has been very supportive of me in terms that when I speak on a critical incident, they would always give me an opportunity to let an investigation run its course. I recognize today that we're in a very different time, and time is not always our friend. And I see how, some departments will delay getting information out, and all that does is breed distrust. And I think most logical thinking folks will give you an opportunity. They recognize that within 1 hour of an investigation, you may not know every aspect of that investigation, but just tell us something, Chief. Did the suspect shoot at the officers? And if so, why? And did the officers return fire? Did they feel like their life was in danger? I mean, those basic questions should be answered and should be answered early on. And if we messed up or we have some concerns, have the courage and the intestinal fortitude to just simply say that. That's what the community has come to expect.
Now, with you leaving and announcing your retirement, can we feel safe? Can we feel good? Can we feel that you're leaving us in good hands? Seeing that as of right now, we do not know who's going to replace you. And you have built so many different relationships with individuals and different organizations, different people within the city. How are you leaving us?
You know, and again, 44 years, 8 years as chief here in Detroit, the second longest running chief in modern times, if you will. I'm leaving with my head up. You know, I started succession planning long before this decision, and you must do that. When you're in a leadership role, you have to think about the future. I care deeply for this city, and certainly I wouldn't leave here and certainly leave here concerned that whoever succeeds me won't be able to get the job done. I'm optimistic that the person that succeeds me will do a phenomenal job. Everybody in this department at the rank of commander and above, maybe captain and above, I've touched. And one thing that I've been working very hard, especially as we've continued in this pandemic, is to mentor those future leaders. And I take that part of my job very seriously. And so I think you will find my exit a seamless one. As we sit here now, I think the mayor in about 10 minutes will be announcing the interim chief. And so we're going to be in good hands. And I'm excited for that person, and I'm excited for the department.
Okay, that's a big concern. I'm glad you shared that because, like I said, you got a lot of community activists that done worked with you. You were accessible, easy to get along with, and whenever there's new leadership that comes into place, it's forming a whole new relationship. So what we're used to from you, we might not get from them, and it might take some time. So I was a little
And that could
concerned about
happen.
that.
I mean, yeah, you know, that could happen. Certainly, you know, I'm leaving the department better than it was. I don't think there's anyone that wants to see this department digress. You know, what's interesting about a culture in any organization, we've changed the culture here. Uh, we've institutionalized, I like to always say, the importance of community policing. And I don't see that going away.
Okay.
I don't see an effort to abandon neighborhood police officers as you and our community have come to know it. So I think this is an opportunity to continue to build on the trajectory of this being a premier police agency. And I know many times people say, well, it's always hard to follow someone that had an exceptional tour of duty. And again, I say that and I qualify it that I didn't do this by myself. I truly believe in the support of team, and many of those team members are still here. And so it's going to continue to soar. I know it.
Okay. Well, I know we got about 20 minutes left, so I want to, talk about some different things. What makes you the chief that you are, that you've been a chief in various different cities? What is it about you and your leadership, or what is it about you in general that makes you who you are, where people want to hire you from different agencies?
Well, I tell you, Lavish, I've been fortunate and blessed. My view of the world, in the world of leading, particularly as a public servant, inclusion is critical. And I'm not just talking internally, but externally. People have to believe that their voice counts. you don't just say something, but follow through is what's important. When you deliver on whatever the issue might be, people know you're serious. I mean, I've heard the stories here. Um, Many officers who've been around 25 years will tell you, you didn't even talk to the chief of police. You just didn't. And they probably wouldn't speak to you in some instances. So that's not the way you lead an organization. You know, oftentimes I went to Martha Ford once when the Lions were in a bad space. The morale of the players was at the very bottom. And I went to Martha Ford. We were at an event. And I just said, you know, I could lead the Detroit Lions organization. I'd apply the same rules that I apply here in Detroit Police. As I indicated at the beginning of your show, the morale was at the very bottom. And when the morale began to rise up, certainly their effectiveness in the community improved dramatically. And I know we don't have a lot of time to go into everything that I've done, but I'll give you another example. Prior to my appointment, they hadn't had a promotional exam in 8 years to the rank of sergeant lieutenant. 8
Right.
years, Lavish.
Yeah.
So when you think about the absence of opportunity, you know, I was in an organization, the police department I spent most of my time, you knew that every 2 years there was going to be a promotional exam. So if you didn't do well on the first go round, you say, you know what, I hit it again in 2 years. And just the level of opportunities, I've tried to replicate and have replicated. When I arrived here, they didn't have the rank of corporal, non-existent. They didn't have the MPO rank, non-existent. They did not have the rank of detective or captain. They had another rank, I guess, before captain was called inspector. Now we have master sergeants. And so that's important because when people know there's an opportunity to move up in an organization, they have a different look at the world. They're engaged, they're encouraged. And so I look back very happy. And again, it translates in how, you know, we interface with the community. Now, are we perfect? There is no perfect anything. Are we going to have officers that are going to engage in behavior that doesn't support what we represent? Of course. And we just have to deal with that. But we have a very different police department right now. And I leave here, I guess it's bittersweet because I love policing. As I said during my press conference, I've not had a bad day. How many people can work somewhere for 44 years and say they never had a bad day?
I'm not too sure about that.
I don't know too many.
Not
but
too
it's how
many
you
at
view the
all.
world. And you know, when you talk about leadership, and I've said this, you don't hear it said often. To be an effective leader, you have to love the people you're leading. Think about that for a moment. You care enough about folks that are doing this very challenging work. It's got to be based on love. And then when you deal with folks, individual or collectively, they know. They know instinctively and intuitively that you deeply care for them. And so that's been a tenet of my success in everywhere I worked. I mean, people in Portland, Maine still talk. Can you come back, Chief? Cincinnati, Ohio, can you come back? You know, and so um, it's humbling. I'm gonna tell you, it's just very humbling.
Yeah. Now, when you came back to Detroit, how bad was Detroit? When I say how bad was it, when you came back, police stations, police precincts, they were closing at 4 o'clock, I believe. The response time was very horrible. The police cars, they were breaking down. They wasn't getting to the citizens. When you came back to Detroit and you heard and seen that, what was your approach?
Well, you know, I knew it was a lot I had to get done in a relatively short amount of time. I was under emergency management. I had the autonomy to do what I needed to do. The emergency manager, Kevin Orr, supported me. He said, look, I know nothing about policing. Just do what we brought you here to do. And I did that. And I knew our infrastructure was important. It was critical. Certainly when Mayor Mike Duggan took office, certainly he's innovative. He's a risk taker. And so we complemented each other very well. When I talked to him about a real-time crime center, he didn't balk. And we ended up building one of the most innovative crime centers in the country, only rivaled by New York. And now that we are redoing our original center, it might be one of the best in the country when it's all said and done. So I only say that, I mean, that's what it takes. You brought up the car issue. Everything that could be wrong was wrong. And so, one way of looking at it, with the glass being half full, is that I can only go up from here. And that's what we did. That's exactly what we did. Also humbling, as I was, speaking at my press conference and looking around at some of the men and women who were there in attendance, our chaplain corps, not a dry eye, man. And that's the most difficult part.
Okay. Now, people don't know everything you had done. And I mean, we can sit on here all day long talking about it, but here's something else that you also brought to the city camp, the Brotherhood and Sisterhood Initiative.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. Seeing that some people don't know what the city camp program was about, which was about at-risk youth, and the Brotherhood and Sisterhood program.
It's all about creating hope. I figured this out when I was in Los Angeles. I think it was my late friend. He was an LAPD SWAT officer. He got killed in the line of duty. But before his untimely death, Randy, as a Christian man, in his off hours, would go into some of the more vulnerable neighborhoods and minister to these children who, may not have the same opportunities. He was very effective. And I remembered I went out with him on occasion to work with him. But after his untimely death, it was clear to me that some of these middle school age children were suffering from PTSD. Keep in mind, I was working in South Los Angeles, the home of violent street gangs. You've heard of them, Bloods and Crips. And imagine these small children seeing their older siblings, their friends murdered, parents incarcerated, maybe murdered. I mean, so what impact does that have on a child? No different than our American heroes who serve abroad in war and they see so much violence. But imagine a child. And so I woke up one day because I responded to a call at a middle school. There was a fight on campus. I was a captain then. And the things that were coming out of these middle school age children was heartbreaking. I said, we got a problem. And I never forget going to the school administrator and said, look, I want to launch a program here at your school. And then we called it boot camp. And it was a way to get out and touch those children in a way that they felt valued, that we could deal with what they were suffering through, and that police officers are your friend. And so we came up with an idea of maybe a 10-week after school program, half day on Saturday. And we ran it. Initially, the school administrator says, look, I don't want anything to do with it. I'm going to allow you to have access to the campus, but I can't support you on this. But you can try it. At the end of 10 weeks, when we had our graduation, there were kids in our program that were failing, disruptive. Some had even been arrested. At the 10-week point, graduation, he broke down and started crying. He couldn't believe it. He was shocked. So, of course, the rest is history. We ran another uh, effort, the boot camp. And as things would have it, I ended up leaving, becoming the chief of Portland. But I took the same model to Cincinnati. Same approach, vulnerable neighborhood, children exposed to trauma, hence the name City Camp. Children in trauma intervention.
Okay.
And it worked extremely well. Like LA, the school administrator that I met with was reluctant, resisted, didn't want anything to do with it. I told her about our experience in LA. There we have it. And then certainly bringing it to Detroit. The only regret that I have, Lavish, about our efforts here, uh, we've had a number of city camp, but I know it was only scratching the surface. Only scratching the surface.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that initiative grows and expands because we need that in our city, especially in our most vulnerable communities.
Right. I was fortunate and lucky enough to speak at one of the city camps to a group of children that was there a while back down at the academy. So,
Right.
I was glad to play my part and hope I inspired some child that was listening to whatever I was speaking about at that particular time.
Oh, I know you did. And I so appreciated you volunteering to do that. I mean, we all have stories. And I look at you now, a successful, motivated businessman, now someone who wants to enter into public life as a servant. It's no greater gift than to be a public servant. And that's why I've said I've never had a bad day uh, because that's what drives me, really touching people's lives and making a difference. There was a Cincinnati Bengal. Uh, I'm trying to think of his name right now. He had an interesting handle. Uh, he was always in trouble. Uh, Great player, but just stayed in trouble. And he took to me, I guess, more like a big brother. And Pac-Man Jones. You probably heard of Pac-Man Jones. They called him Pac-Man because I guess he was notorious for always packing a pistol
Okay.
and then getting caught. But Pac-Man stayed in trouble. And so when I launched City Camp in Cincinnati, I reached out to Pac-Man to see if he would volunteer his time. Without hesitation, he got involved. And what was beautiful about that story is the fact that it changed his life. It changed his life because he knew he was having an impact on these young children. So I'll never forget his commitment to it. So your involvement does matter, and it does make a difference.
All right, great. I gotta share this and talk about this. You're a car guy. You're a big car guy. What other
Big car
chief?
guy.
Right, huge car guy. You got a couple yourself. But what other chief across the country sits there and allows Detroiters the opportunity to get away and do what they do with their cars? And what I mean by that, I'm speaking on a responsible level. You found places and locations for
Yes.
people to throw car shows, car
Yes.
events, with the drifters and the guys burning rubber. You took time out to talk to them to find a location for them to have somewhere to go. You took time out to let me occupy Livernois every Wednesday for lavish bike nights every summer and
Right.
take up that space. How many police chiefs out there or city leaders in a position such as yourself are doing what you're doing to touch the community as far as giving them
Oh,
things to do that you know they're going to do anyway, but helping them find a way to do it?
that's interesting. I don't know. This is something that I was passionate about. It's no secret, as you pointed out. I've had a passion for muscle cars I thought I was going to be an automotive engineer, and I took a sharp right turn and became a police officer. But I never lost my love for muscle cars. I just didn't. But that said, it was a way to connect. Our first effort when I was in Los Angeles, I was commanding officer of a station uh, that covered Crenshaw Boulevard. I know some of your viewers or listeners might know about Crenshaw, lowriders. And you think Detroit's Motown. On any given Sunday, they got a fun day Sunday too. But Sundays and probably early morning Saturday nights, they would cruise the Shaw.
Absolutely.
And so I come up with an idea to connect with that segment of the community. I was in Beverly Hills and they were having a classic car show. It was a lot of these high end, expensive like Duesenbergs. I mean, 1925, and they had taken over a street, Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. And it was at that moment I said, what if I could create the same dynamic in the minority neighborhood in LA? It was an area called Leimert Park.
Mm-hmm.
But Leimert Park abutted Crenshaw Boulevard. And so what did we do? We threw a car show. The first one was so successful, man. We had probably 3,500 people in attendance who came out. We had entertainment. We had all types of cars. Lowriders are big in LA, so it wasn't just muscle cars. Certainly LA is home to a lot of exotics. So we had exotics, we had muscle cars, and we had lowriders and motorcycles. And so it was a big event and successful. So following year, we did it again. Anything that we made, it was to support our youth programming at the station. And so, of course, bringing it to Detroit and meeting you and others who like to gather and show cars, it was just a natural. And we've had, and I don't need to tell you, we've had people come from, I don't know, you tell your audience. I mean, I know they've come as far as Ohio,
Correct.
Illinois, to come to Detroit to take part in
car
I remember
events that's going
some
on.
of the places you hosted and walking through there, seeing people from Ohio, and so it was a beautiful time. And I know some folks on my staff were asking me, well, I hope we're going to do a car show this year. I hope you'll be in attendance. And of course I will. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Well, that's a good thing. Now, before you came to Detroit, the police department, they have never had a car show. I mean, there's so many different things that we can talk about that the Detroit Police Department has not done, and not so much the Detroit Police Department, but it's so many things that the community has not been involved in, has not partnered up with the Detroit Police Department until you came. That's big.
It's so important. I got to tell you, and you brought it up earlier, the sisterhood, brotherhoods, holding an all-day youth event at Aretha Franklin Amphitheater, and how successful that was. Getting support from our hip hop community. I got to tell you, where do I end? I mean, 8 years. I know it's a lot I'm leaving out, but this is about touching lives. And I think the one thing, people got to know me as a person, and I think that's important. Many times people sit in these seats, some forget where they've come from. They have no real connection unless the connection benefits them in some sort of way personally. That's not my wiring. And that's why I'm convinced that as I move on and transition, I'm going to continue in a role as a public servant, because that's my passion.
Right. You became something such as a real life celebrity in Detroit.
Is that why they call me Hollywood?
That's probably why they call you Hollywood. I mean, because
Right.
when you go out somewhere, you're going out and people from everywhere, they're approaching you. They just want to talk to you.
Right.
Can we take a
Right.
picture with you? When they see me post a picture with you, they're calling me, oh man, that's the chief. He's so cool. I ran into him.
Right.
You're human. You let them know who you are. You're very approachable, and I like that. And I mean, for me, I would like to follow in your footsteps when I become police commissioner. I want to be there for the people.
You're a natural. And this is why I say you'll be a phenomenal police commissioner. And as we spoke before your show, as a police chief, I've not endorsed candidates. I always have been one that, tried my best to keep politics out of the work. But this is of direct importance to me. Having a police commissioner that not only believes in the work that they must do, but also knows the importance of connecting with the police department and the community. And that's so important. And so when I heard you were considering and made a decision to do this, all I could say is wow. And I got to tell you, this is a great day. And I tell you, it's just not me saying it. Many officers have come to me that know I know you. They said, so what do you think? I said, it'll be a day to celebrate. And there's some good people that serve on that commission. I don't want to leave your viewers with the wrong impression. I've enjoyed working with the police commission over the years now. But I got to tell you, there's some that, we need someone has a new view.
Absolutely.
Of the world. And the other thing about you, Lavish, and you're very humble. You're not doing this for ego. That's not how you're wired. You're doing it because you truly want to give back. And I got to tell you something. I think this is only the beginning for you. I think this is going to propel you into even higher positions of political leadership. It's not going to surprise me, and I'm not going to forget about you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate those kind words. Really do. Really do. Really do. So, because we're going to come to an end, what do we have in store for the chief? Is that something up for conversation, or are you going to focus on June 1st and your retirement? Should we leave it like that?
Yeah. Right now, I've said a few things, and there's a lot of anticipation about possibly what I might consider. I am humbled, and I'll say this: I have gotten calls across this great state, around the city, stopped on the street. You were talking about, people stop me and want a picture. It's now gone so much higher. I mean, I'm getting calls around the country. And so it's a lot to think about. I'm humbled that people think enough for me that I can certainly take my leadership skills to another level. And so I'm giving some deep thought over what the next step will be.
Deep thought. You are or were the deputy mayor for the city of Detroit.
Yes, I was.
Some people did not realize that, nor did they know that. I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah. A lot of people didn't know that you were a deputy mayor, that you worked under the mayor as a deputy mayor.
Right. I was a deputy mayor and police chief, and that was very unique. I was thankful that the mayor had enough confidence in me to appoint me to that very important position. As you know, when the mayor's out of town, or if, God forbid, something would have happened, we became disabled, I then would have been the mayor of the city. I've served in that capacity as the mayor travels. It's not really talked about. Nobody knew it. It wasn't a thing where if the mayor went out of town, whether it was on business or pleasure, I didn't say, hey, everybody, I'm the mayor this weekend, or I'm the mayor this week. It was just something I never talked about.
Man, you got a lot of stuff under your belt, man. You got a lot of stuff under your belt, man. You a heck of a guy. It's going to be a challenge for somebody to fill your shoes. I'm telling you, man, you got
I
a
appreciate
lot
that.
under your belt. Now on the flip side, because I want to end this, I keep saying that time is going by. You have a lot of Craig supporters that's been supporters, but then you made your announcement. You say, hey, openly, it's no secret. It's no secret. I am who
That's,
I am. I am what I am, and I
no,
am
I
a
said it. I'll
Republican.
say it for you. I'm a Republican. And so, to those who were shocked, as I kind of alluded to earlier, uh, it wasn't a thing where it was an issue. I want people to judge me on my body of work,
Bingo.
the effectiveness of what transpired during my tour. That's what I want people to not only remember, but embrace. And R does not change me.
Correct.
And the one thing that I'll tell your viewers, you know, I've heard some horrible things about, especially African Americans that are Republicans, and horrible things about Caucasians that are Republican. This very myopic view of the world. It's like you've heard me say you shouldn't paint an entire profession because of one bad deed, that the entire profession is a racist. Um, you can't paint an entire party that way. So, you know, I grew up a Democrat. I was raised a Democrat. When I left Detroit and went to Los Angeles all those years, and we know that Los Angeles is a very democratic city. I was a Democrat. Although I can tell you, I think I started to transition during my time in LA. I didn't know why I felt a certain way about certain things. And then it was my time in Maine. It was my exposure in Maine where I really began to realize that I'm a conservative. But I'm still the same guy that Lavish and everybody in Detroit has come to know. That same guy.
Right. I'm glad you spoke on that, because you have some people that believe in this religion, some people that believe in that religion, and they're free to believe in what they want to believe in, but that does
Absolutely.
not define them as a person. And you being a Republican or a Democrat, that's what you choose to do. I judge you based off of your body of work, your leadership, what you brought to Detroit. At no
Right.
point in time at all while you were the chief have you let your political views get in the way of anything. You treated everybody in such, and that
Right.
shows a lot. And as you said, you've been a Republican. It was no big deal in the
And
past.
people, and you know what, Lavish, people close to me, I mean, you wouldn't have to be a brain surgeon to listen to the things I would say. I mean, as you know, big supporter of the Second Amendment. 2014, I openly talked about law-abiding citizens should be armed. I've gone to CPL classes of all women, mostly women of color. Do you know there are more African American women CPL holders, and somebody else had this data, than just about any place in the country? And so, African American folk, law abiding citizens, guess what? They love their guns. They just do. And that's not the only thing. I mean, I certainly, there are other aspects of me why I'm a conservative. But again, my transition took place during my time in Maine. This was not some knee jerk wake up one morning and say, you know what? I think I'm going to be a Republican.
Right.
It didn't happen that way.
You have your reasons, and whatever those are your reasons. It's not for us to understand why.
But you know what I also say, Lavish? I know we're getting ready to wrap this up. When I think of great Republicans of color, first who comes to mind is Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was a Republican. And you don't hear a sour word about him at all. Somebody else that comes to mind, and I think if that man had run for president, he's a man of color. He's a Republican. He served our country, Colin Powell. Not one person could utter a bad word about that man. And I think you may or may not agree. And there was a governor here, and his name was Milliken. And Milliken was beloved by Detroiters. And you know why? Because of who he was.
And that's what makes the difference, who you are.
One of my friends, and I know you know him, another great activist, Detroit activist, we had the conversation about, some people he thought that were Republicans, and he talked about Milliken. And I didn't know it, but did you know Coleman Young and Milliken were very close?
No, not at all.
Very supportive of one another. So again, it really is, who is this person? You got good and bad on both sides of the spectrum. It's got to be about the person. And I'm going to tell you, people in America right now are just fed up with division, fed up. And I think you would agree.
I do agree. Can't we eventually just come together for once?
Right.
For once, just about something. So, all right, Chief, I want to thank you for your time coming on my show. I want to thank you for serving as the chief of police for this fine city that we're in.
Yes, sir.
You're going to have the people that admire you and love you. They're going to miss you. They're going to hate to see you go, just as well as you're going to have other people out there that's going to be the opposite. But that's cool. That's okay. I'm glad to have met you. I'm glad to have taken notes and learned what I learned from you and built the relationships throughout the department. Everyone from the assistant chiefs all the way down to the patrol officers. You know, I got a chance to meet and understand. So I'm going to play my part. And I wish you the greatest in whatever your endeavors might be. Okay. I want you to hear it from me. You know, you were my chief, man. Chief Craig, Hollywood, whatever they want to call you. You were the people's champ around here in my eyes. So,
well, thank you for that.
Yeah, not a problem.
But only the best to you going forward. If I can be any assistance to you during your transition, I'm optimistic that you're going to be the people's choice. But if you ever need some assistance, you have questions, I'm just a phone call away.
Absolutely. All right, now, everybody that's watching, thank you for tuning in. That is Chief James Craig.
All right.